All right, y'all, welcome back to Really Good Soup, and we're back with another chapter review for the One Piece manga, chapter 1167. Before we get into that, if you guys have been liking these reactions, please throw me a like or a subscribe or a share, possibly, and maybe check out some of the other stuff that I do on my channel. I'm watching the One Piece anime right now. I just finished the Jujutsu Kaisen anime, and I'm also watching the show Black Sails. So if you're into any of that, feel free to check it out. But yeah, let's get into the One Piece chapter. On the cover art, we have a little fun art of the people from Nami's village, Nojiko and Jen, being adored by a little cat that's stealing a book, which is like a reference to Nami from way back when in her flashback when she was being yelled at for also stealing like a book. So we start off the chapter 5 years after the God Valley incident, and most of this chapter now is just kind of moving through different time periods, different locations, as kind of a way to start like wrapping up the flashback, or at least bringing the flashback closer to the point of where we started it, which like was us witnessing Harald's death, or at least through Loki's eyes. But we start off first with a bunch of different accounts from people sailing around the seas, specifically around the Florian Triangle, saying that they were taken out by some giant fucking creature that would basically just one-shot them. And everybody made it sound like, oh, that's just what the Florian Triangle is, or like, you sure it wasn't a Sea King? But the narration shows that it was actually Harald, who was just jumping off his ship and just like one slicing any ship that came by, or at least any pirate ship that came by. Imagine like you're in the Grand Line and like you may have heard of giants before, but you're like, oh, maybe I'll encounter them at some point. And you're just chilling, you're with your crew, you're having a great time. You happen to sail into the Florian Triangle, and the first thing that you encounter is like essentially a final boss level strength, like behemoth. So yeah, poor pirate crews that just like, this is their first encounter with either like a giant or just in the Florian Triangle, it's before the New World. So like these are fodder pirates that are being eliminated, by the way. And Harald is just like loving every second of it because he's like absolutely whoring himself out for the world government. Meanwhile, we see little glimpses of, the other big players from God Valley as they start to, form their own crews, start to reach their own powers respectively. And we see little glimpses of like some of the other Rocks pirates, notably Ochoku, who has a giant fucking slash on his face right now. Is kind of reasonable to assume that like somebody came back at least to try to beat some fucking sense into Ochoku or not beat some sense, but really just like enact some sort of revenge on him, just like selling out Shaki, which very likely could have been Shiki, just like given how devoted Shiki was to Shaki until, she got swept up by Rayleigh. And then we get a little bit more from the narration detailing that, the Roger pirates, they circumnavigated the globe. They found the One Piece. We see Buggy, we see Shanks, noticeably really happy amongst their crew, really loving the life that they've been leading. Cut to, we see a couple giants being recruited by the Marines, which, that's like, Harald is just like absolutely gushing, but not gushing as much as what's about to unfold up in the Holy Land, where Harald, he's made his way. He's got a little meeting with the Gorosei. Meanwhile, all the other like celestial dragons are like, holy shit, an ancient giant. I hope I can make it my slave one day. Don't let Harald hear that, otherwise he'll like be begging for the chance to. And like, look at his fucking face, just like as he gets his fucking God's Knight like prospect tattoo. He's like, oh, it's such an honor, which just like, imagine Rox looking below and looking at you, being like, dog, what the fuck was our friendship for if you're just gonna be like, oh, it's such an honor. Like the amount of aura that Harald has lost just like throughout this flashback, like it's crazy. Besides that point, we get a little bit of lore detailing of like how one essentially becomes a God's Knight. And we get that in the form of the Viz translations calling covenants, what the TCB scans was just calling contracts. And we have, a shallow covenant or shallow's covenant, the first step, I guess, of becoming a God's Knight. Like maybe you get like some like powers. I don't, maybe you might not get regen yet necessarily, but maybe you might be able to like, travel through the abyss because, he does have the abyss mark. But then we also have two other covenants. We have the Depths Covenant, and then we have the Abyssal Covenant, which they say are reserved for only 13 individuals. Those who enter those contracts get to actually, meet God, which like I think it kind of makes sense, which like based on just context alone, the Gorosei themselves, they probably have like the abyssal contracts or the covenants, like the absolute like deep layer. And I'm guessing the God's Knights themselves, they probably have the mid layer, the Death's Covenant. And then we have the Shallows Covenant, which is what Harald probably has right now. We get a line from Nostros saying that on the day that you become a proper knight, you shall know the true depths of the world, which makes sense because it seems like all of the knights, they know of Emu. And it seems that, at least Harald right now, he's done the shallow contract, but he obviously does not know of Emu. So it makes me think that Shamrock and Gunko, when they pulled up to Loki, they probably offered him a shallow contract or maybe even a deep contract. Maybe they might have offered him the chance to like meet Emu. Who knows? And like Harald just like, he barely even gives a shit about the lore. He's just like, okay, cool, yeah. And then after all of that, will you guys finally recognize Elbaf? Like, bro, you gotta stop with the groveling. And like the Gorosei was like, yeah, of course, and trust me, it'll be a great honor or whatnot. And Harald's face, like he's like lights up. He's like, wow, I'm so grateful, guys. Just like it's so pathetic to see, man. And like I'm siding more and more with Loki, just seeing how much of a fucking tool Harald has been turned into by his own volition. So yeah, Harald, now that he's like a devoted God Steel, which also, bringing that back a little bit, we now learn that God Steel, like the devoted blade of God or whatever, that is a rank that's just meant for God's Knight prospects. So back in God Valley, we learned that Gunko was a God Steel, so we now know that she was just being at the time, a prospect for a God's Knight. But anyway, moving on, we cut a little bit further into the Holy Land, and we meet up with our boy Garling, which, and I'm not going to lie, as much as I loathe Garling for being just lame and having 0 feats and just being an all-around kind of bitch, I got to say his fit, it's clean. That's fire right there. We get a little bit more dialogue between, Summers. We see a little young Shamrock, and we get a little bit more fucking bootlicking from Harald. And furthermore, the God's Knights give him a means of communication saying like, hey, we'll call you if we need to. Basically do whatever we ask you to, and also don't mention the fact that you're working with us. And Harald's like, you got it, boss. Absolutely Aurelus. And he's also met with Garp. So like he's been pretty chummy with like a lot of like the old school legends. They're drinking, they're chatting it up, and Neptune reveals that, hey, I'm about to have a daughter soon, and she's about to have like this insane fucking power. You should totally marry off your son Loki to my daughter, which is just, it's fucking insane considering. And even Harald is just like, bro, relax. At this point, Loki's like, what, 30 or like 40? And you're like trying to get your friend's like son to be married to your yet to be born daughter. Like, chill out, dude. But another little fun tidbit that we had learned from this conversation is that Harald refers to his yet to be born daughter as Shaggy or Mosa Mosa, which we now I'm pretty sure we could just conclude that the person that Loki has been talking to through the transponder cell has been Shirahoshi, which good for Shirahoshi for finally growing a tiny bit of a spine, because as much as she tends to cry around anything that Luffy says, imagine her having to hold a conversation with Loki, who is just asshole just any chance he gets. So good for her. And we also see that same year, Harald, he went back to Elbaf and he was talking with Saul, asking him to open a school, which we'll learn is going to be a school that enforces the ideas of peace and cultural mixing. Yeah, so We just get to see a little bit of Saul in the flashback, which is fun. And we see, this is Saul after O'Hara, or at least not too long after O'Hara, because we see that big scar on his face. Cut to 5 years later, we're reunited again with our boy Fisher Tiger. He's making his escape right now, trying to free the other slaves. And he encounters at what he first thinks is a god's knight, but what he actually sees, it's our boy Shanks, who slices up his shackles, frees him, and also says that he left the armory open for him, which definitely helps, Fisher Tiger free more of the slaves, including Boa Hancock and her sister Sandersonia, as well as Koala. So like it's a little fun interconnection of all the different like events that we see around this time. And we also got like a little bit of, I guess you could call it closure, or more just like filling in the gaps of what happened with Fisher Tiger, because like we always knew like he was able to make it out of Mary Joie alive, but like we always thought like, did he not encounter any of the God's Knights? Which we now see he technically almost did. But right after the incident, Harald and the rest of the God's Knights, they're informed of the incident, and they're all obviously on high alert. They're trying to figure out who could have done this, and want to like start, taking action to try to find the culprit. And we see, 13 years after we last saw him on Roger's ship, we catch up with our boy Shanks, who has made it back to the Holy Land. He's got bandages across his face, which we can only assume that he got from Blackbeard. So he must have encountered Blackbeard at some point before coming to the Holy Land. He's also been made a devoted Blade of God. We see our boy Shanks putting on an Oscar level performance right now, because he's got both Garling and Shamrock convinced that he's just as shitty of a celestial dragon as them, despite being gone for like 24 years. Really, all it takes is just being like, hey, I hate commoners. I hate freaking just being on the surface world. Anything that isn't like about bettering myself or about being of like higher superior blood or whatever, I don't want anything to do with it. And in true celestial like dragon fashion, Garling and Shamrock are just eating that shit up. I gotta give it to Shanks. Like that's Oscar. Give him the Oscar, man. We also get a line in this interaction from Harald where he says that he thought the same thing when he first saw Shamrock, but he seems like he thinks that he's met Shanks somewhere before. So it is very possible that Harald may have met up with the Roger Pirates at some point and saw a young Shanks on the crew, and maybe just, I don't know, maybe just had that face in his memory, because then later on when he meets Shamrock, he's like, oh, wait, have I seen you before? And now he's like getting that same deja vu again. And finally, we cut to Elbaf, where we learn that Ida has been sick and she's been getting worse and worse every day. Their doctors are unable to help her, even though they have now one of them like referred to as like these world government connections. And Ida, she's trying to power through it, while the rest of the giants, or like her help staff, they're thinking that, oh, we need to immediately signal Harald. Maybe he'll be able to do something. Meanwhile, Ida just like, nah, don't worry about it. It can't be anything that bad. Meanwhile, we see Loki pull up to the crib. He had just like, I guess, taken out a giant like ox or a bull or something. And he wants Ida to cook it up, not knowing how sick she is right now. It's fun to see Loki like actually start warming up to Ida, because we saw in his childhood, he would barely ever give her the time of day. And now he's bringing her food. He's like starting to act a little bit more chummy with her. It's still like to the bewilderment of the rest of the giants, especially like to the ones that like know that Hyrodin is probably the actual like more caring son, and he's out away looking for a doctor somewhere outside of Elbaf. And Ida, either way, is like still giggling. She's like still heartwarmed by both gestures from her sons, which just like goes to show like she's a mother through and through for both of her children, loves them both equally. Yeah, you love to see it. And on the final page, we learn that Loki went to the original village of Loki, his birth mother, Estrid, and he talked with, for some reason, he's been talking with the village folk there, and it's revealed that the village folk ended up poisoning Ida because they couldn't stand the idea of their royal inheritance being lost, especially to a filthy commoner like this. And God, Loki absolutely unleashes hell on all of them. Like, we learn now, Loki remembers his mom. He remembers just the absolute lack of love that she gave him. He remembers her freaking tossing him out into the underworld. And now he finds out that his actual mom, or his like the mom that he considered an actual mom, is about to die. And just like, look at the fucking destruction that is just like laid all around him. And it's interesting to know that one of the lies that we learned about Loki is that he would sometimes commit arson in his younger childhood. And we're seeing a case of that right now, but we know that this isn't coming from a place of malice or like trickery. It's just straight up anger for like his mom, the only person that he's ever known as a mom. So it's really just heartbreaking to see, man, especially because in the same panel, Ida is just like, reinforcing again that it doesn't matter if we're related by blood. Loki's just like Hyrudan, and that they're both my sons. They're both my sweet little boys. Like, poor Loki, man. Between like this happening to between his birth mom not loving him, to this happening to his real mom, to his idol being fucking executed, to his dad straight up betraying his idol. Like, Loki didn't deserve all of this, man. So I'm fully behind Loki right now. I can't wait to see Loki just like what like when we actually see the interaction between Loki and Harald, like when the flashback started, it's gonna be probably gut wrenching because like we know Loki didn't kill Harald out of cold blood, but we do basically know that Loki did kill him. So I'm sure that's going to be also a pretty heartrending like fight, because when Harald gets Dami reverse-eyed, he's also, his personality is going to shift, and he's going to start saying all this like shit that Loki's probably internalized for a while, like the fact that, yeah, you let my idol die, and you've like sold yourself out to the world government, and you weren't here to save my mom. So I don't know, man. Like, I am happy that this flashback is starting to conclude a little bit, but I'm really not liking the direction it's headed emotionally, because like I on one hand I do somewhat tiny bit feel for Harald, just like the desperation and like what he's trying to do, but like the execution has been so fucking terrible that like I'm feeling less and less sympathy for him, and just infinitely more sympathy for Loki, because just like a lot of this is just like what happens in Loki's life is just straight up is because of the actions of Harald. Like, Harald married this like demon woman, was not around when she was like tossing him into the underworld. He sold out his best friend / Loki's idol, and now he's just like willingly becoming a slave. And it's one thing to become the slave, but also just acting like you're happy about it. Like, oh, it's such an honor, guys. Just, overall, the chapter was fantastic. I'd give it a straight, 14 out of 10. My respect for Harald is like, it's plummeting more and more. And my respect for Loki is skyrocketing. So Loki stocks are up. Harald stocks, just sell them right now. But yeah, let's take a look at a couple of tweets that I enjoyed. So this one pretty much echoed what I felt, what a lot of us felt. Like, the only thing that I would say kind of incorrect about this is that Rox for sure is looking from hell. But yeah, like, come on, man. How are you going to do this to your best friend, Harald? But then the other one that I thought was kind of interesting. So this line has been just like endlessly interpreted for the longest time, but since it was originally published. And for a while we thought Whitebeard was talking about Roger. And then we thought, oh, maybe Whitebeard was talking about Garling. But what if Whitebeard was talking about Shamrock? Because like we now know that Garling very likely did not pull up to Whitebeard, especially, yeah, like the auraless Garling who like could barely hold himself against a 1 HP rocks. Like, there's no way he pulled up to a Whitebeard. But Shamrock, on the other hand, who Garling claimed is like Shanks could be at his level if he were to become like, or if you were to get one of those contracts. So I'm putting a little bit more stocks into Shamrock right now, even though we also have yet to see Shamrock fight outside of his mythical devil fruit sword, which also brings me to this tweet. So we've now confirmed that basically confirmed that Shanks got his sword from the Holy Land. And because of what we've seen with Cerberus, Shamrock's sword, it's not a stretch to think that Shanks might have a mythical griffin sword on his hip right now. I don't think that's what the case is. I really want to think that Shanks is just, a hockey man and that Shanks has just been doling out hockey. Maybe his sword has a fuck ton of hockey in it. Who knows? But I think it would be kind of fun if that was like Shanks's like, hidden technique or whatever, that his sword is actually a devil fruit user, because it is technically not him being a devil fruit user, but yeah, it would be interesting to see if that's the case. But yeah, we have no break this week. I'm excited to see where this flashback goes. Excited to see like more of like where Loki goes just emotionally, because goddamn, he really didn't deserve any of this. But yeah, till next time.